right. And so, yeah, well, welcome to the conversation. Alice Tarnawski and Bryony Gregory, who are with us here. And these two lovely ladies are the first all-female double entry for the Sydney Hobart Yacht Race, and both joining us from Sydney as well. So looking forward, like myself, and I'm sure a lot of us, for this lockdown easing next week.
Oh yeah.
So Alice and Bryony, thank you so much for giving us your time this morning as well. It's really much appreciated. And I wanted to start by just asking you as well about your sailing background. Kind of, how did you get into sailing? How long you've been sailing, and what sparked that? And maybe Alice, if we get you to give us an update first.
Yeah, so I've been sailing since I was maybe 10 or 11. We had a little yacht when I was growing up, and then I actually grew up in the Blue Mountains in Sydney, Sydney's west. So I've got family that live in Newport, and my cousin's a really keen sailor. So one weekend we went down there, and I got thrown in a little Pittwater Junior, and I just loved it. And ever since then, I've been, I was traveling down from the mountains every weekend to go sailing, and getting thrown in different boats. So started in Pittwater Juniors, went into Opties, Lasers, Flying 11s, and then I got involved in the youth development program up at MHYC. And that's where I really got into match racing, and from there kind of got into a bit more offshore stuff. So I did my first offshore race on a boat called Perpetual Motion, of Martin 49, Pittwater Coffs, and then from there I just loved ocean racing. And so since then I've really just been doing a lot more kind of yacht racing, one design, Etchells, Far 40s, McConaughey's. Yeah. Any moment I get to spend on the water, I will.
Yeah, that's awesome. And Bryony, how about yourself? How did you get into sailing, and give us a little bit about your background?
Yeah, hi everyone. Yeah, so I grew up in the UK, and I was fortunate. My dad's a sailor, and he got me into sailing pretty young. He bought an Enterprise boat. I don't know if they have them in Australia, but it's a dinghy with blue sails. They're very nice. They're very cool little boats. I was about 6 years old. He bought that, and I just loved it. And then I got involved with my local club, which is called French and Pond Sailing Club, which is pretty much pond, just a small lake in southeast England. And I got into the international cadet fleet there and started crewing for some of the older kids, and then eventually got my own boat, and then started competing around the UK. And then when I was about 20, when I was in my late teens, I started getting into yacht racing a bit more. So I'd go down to Hamble, if anyone knows, it's near Southampton, and did some racing out of there on like J109s and other yachts. And then I went traveling to Australia when I was 20, and then got into the sailing scene here, and then I've never left.
Awesome. And I can relate to that. It's a bit addictive. If you're into sailing and you end up in Sydney, then it's hard to leave. Just looking at, you've both done so much. What would you say is kind of your biggest achievements, or your couple kind of biggest achievements, or something you're most proud of?
Oh, I'll go first. I feel like compared to some of the other girls that you've got on today, we kind of feel like, we've done a lot, but, it's not like we've sailed around the Southern Ocean or, done the Sail GP. But I guess I won a national titles for the Australian women's match racing circuit. I've been overseas and sailed at the Women's World Championships for match racing, and then in 2019 went to Long Beach and sailed in the Far 40 Worlds there, where we got first Corinthian and third overall, so that was pretty cool. There's a whole bunch of things that I can kind of think of that we've done, but it's really hard to nail down just one thing that I'm like, yeah, that was really awesome.
Yeah, you've done so much. And you were telling me just before we started this about an award that you and Bryony won. That was quite funny. So can you share that with the audience?
I'll take this. Yeah. So Alice and I met during the 2016 Worlds, Far 40 Worlds in Sydney, and we were sailing together on the Mighty 40. And they had an award at the end. We didn't know we were getting this, that they had an award for the most women on a boat, and Alice and I won it. So that was a great achievement.
Because there were two of you, right?
There were two of us.
It was so novel. Right.
So the Far 40 fleet's come a long way since then. There's now a lot of teams that sail with 3 or even 4 women. So that's really cool for a team of 10. But we'd like to see more women get involved in one design, that's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's good to see that we are making progress, but yeah, we thought that one was quite funny. Bryony, how about you? Besides your award for being one of 2 women on a boat, what would you say is kind of one of your biggest achievements?
Yeah, it's sort of similar thing. I've done a lot of stuff. It's hard to sort of pinpoint one specific thing. I think maybe for me is when I had my first role as a boat captain. So for those that don't know, a boat captain's not necessarily like the skipper of the boat, but the person in charge of the boat. So anything that was to go wrong with the maintenance or anything that was to break, I'd be in charge basically of the boat and making sure it got there in one piece and just maintaining as we go along, doing deliveries. And I had my first sort of big role doing the Hobart in, I think it was 2016 on the Cookson 50. And yeah, it's sort of the biggest responsibility I've had as a crew member. And yeah, we got there in one piece. So that was a good start.
Yeah, that's amazing. And talking about Sydney Hobart, how many Sydney Hobarts have you done, Bryony?
I've done 3.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Alice?
I've done just 1.
Okay, and I'm asking this because it leads into my next question, which is you have decided to and are now the first all-female double-handed entry for the Sydney Hobart. So Sydney Hobart this year is it's the first year that it's going to have a double-handed division, and you're planning to take on that challenge as the first female entry. So what made you want to take on this challenge? Tell us a bit about this.
Yeah, so this is just so funny how this came about. So Alice and I, we will go on a daily, not a daily walk, a walk every week, especially during lockdown. When it first happened, we like took the time and went for a walk along either Manly Beach or DY Beach. And we just chat about sailing and our lives and what we want to do. And then we were chatting about the two-handed division that was coming up. And we're like, oh, that'd be really cool to do that. And it'd be a really amazing opportunity for us to develop our skills, get opportunities to do stuff we don't normally get to do on the boat all the time because we get pigeonholed into certain positions. And it'd be cool just to experience everything, driving the boat, trimming, up on the bow, doing whatever we want, basically. And then we're like, yeah, this would be cool. And then we're like, oh, let's do it. Let's see what we can do. And then Alice had a good idea to go chat to John Bacon and Tower. And do you want to follow?
Yeah, well, we kind of talked about like, who can we talk to? Like, who's done double-handed racing? Like, where do we start to even, like, we just don't know where to start. So I sent a message to John being like, hey, we know you guys tried to do did the Melbourne Osaka a few years ago. We're curious and want to do some double-handed racing. Can we pick your brains? And we sat down with John and just had a meeting, and we said, look, we've got this idea, we want to do it. And he was like, oh, that's awesome. Yeah, let's make it happen. And it just kind of went from there. So we've got this, he's bringing over the brand new Far X2. So we'll have a brand new boat to do it in. We've got some great people supporting us. So between John, David Sampson, Brett Perry, we've got some great expertise in double-handed sailing and, single-handed sailing. So we've got a really great network, and then the support of the RPAYC as well. We've got some really great people supporting us. So, yeah.
That's amazing. And you did mention the boat. Can you tell us a little bit more about the boat that you are going to be using for the trip? Maybe just kind of what it is, how it's getting set up so that it's, you can manage that double-handed.
Yeah, so the boat's called, the Far X2, and it's being built currently in Indonesia. And Brett Perry is the guy project managing it, and it's just an awesome boat. So it's basically being designed so it's 30 foot, and the idea is that it's going to be sort of the fastest offshore 30-foot boat is the plan, and it's completely set up for two-handed. So that is the whole goal. So it's been designed around being two-handed. So it's got things like water ballast in there. For those that don't know, it's water that gets pumped into a tank on the side of the boat. So in lieu of having like 10 crew on the side, and yeah, so the whole cockpit layout is also being designed so that it's safe for just 2 people. So they've got like a cockpit roof that comes over the cabin, the cockpit, that so you can sort of sit under when it's really bad weather and get out of the rain and the waves and all of that and the wind, and obviously autopilot and all those things that come with it.
Nice. And the Sydney Hobart is notoriously can be a very challenging and dangerous race, and especially just taking on this challenge with just 2 on board. What kind of things are you doing to prepare yourself and to prepare, I guess, mentally, both physically and mentally, and just your equipment and everything for the voyage?
So I think at the moment, I mean, COVID's made it really difficult for us to do a lot of the offshore training and like lead up events that we were hoping to do. So really at the moment, it's been about getting fit physically, fit mentally, eating well. We're both doing a lot of extra sort of training. So I'm really trying to brush up my skills in navigation and completing a few little courses. And then we're just trying to do as much sailing as we can. So been lucky to get out on a little Figaro Beneteau 3, do a bit of sailing on that. And then it's going to be a lot of just get on the water, get sailing, get out in the most uncomfortable conditions, and just get used to being uncomfortable.
Yeah, great. And Bryony, anything specifically that you're doing mentally to prepare for the voyage as well?
I think it's all just it's just all about being as prepared as possible, and just make sure fitness is key. Going sailing as much as possible. I mean, learning up on the boat. I mean, we don't actually have the boat right now, but trying to get as much info on the boat as we can, and just get as clued up and like obviously doing navigation, just brushing up on navigation, weather as much as we can, and it's all just as much as we can during COVID.
I know COVID has really thrown you a bit of a curveball, hasn't it? Because it's made it really hard for, like you said, all of those preparation races, which you'd normally do to kind of iron out some of these, the little bugs, the little things that might come up. It means we don't have those. So I'm sure there's, a lot of teams are going to be challenged by that, but, being a double-handed team, probably even more so.
Yeah.
How are you, when you think about, say, how the 2 of you are kind of planning to work together and manage sleep and manage, you're just kind of on board segregation of duties, let's call it. I mean, do you have any kind of have you kind of thought about that? Do you have any plans around how you're actually going to manage the actual trip?
So I think essentially Alice and I are going to have to learn how to sail the boat solo, so because quite a lot of the time it will be one of us on deck, the other one sleeping, and obviously for some bigger maneuvers you're going to have to get everyone up, and probably take a lot more time than you think to do certain roles. So even tacking the boat, jibing the boat, it might take us 20 minutes to do it, as opposed with the setup and getting prepared, as opposed to a fully crewed boat, which would be like, oh yeah, 3, 2, 1, let's go, sort of thing. So I think it's definitely going to be managing sort of the sleep. We obviously want to get enough sleep so that we're not exhausted, but then you also need to have enough time. You can't just leave the boat sailing by itself as well. So it's a bit of a fine balance.
Everything two-handed sailing, you have to take a lot more time to do well, because if something goes wrong, or you lose a sheet, or something gets caught, or it takes so much longer to correct those problems and those errors. I mean, one of the things that I know a lot of the Vendée guys go and do is they write up the action plan for each maneuver, and they'll have it laminated and stuck somewhere in the cockpit. So this is how to jibe, this is how to tack, how to hoist a kite, and you just tick off the list when you're really tired and it's really uncomfortable, and that's a good way for you to kind of stay on top of the situation. Or
that makes sense. And it's interesting because, like you said, some of these things seem like they're basic maneuvers, as in tacking or jibing, but when you're tired and when there's 2 of you and when there's difficult conditions, having it written out there seems like a really good idea. So kind of all in the preparation as well, like Lisa was saying. So preparing for this trip, there's a lot of financial costs and stuff, as well as you have to organize the boat, you have to organize everything. Like how are you kind of funding this?
So we're very fortunate to have John, who's very kindly lending us his boat, which is amazing.
Yeah.
And then we've also partnered up with Nexpa, which is a sugar-free, naturally sugar-free drinks company. And they are also supporting us in this. And then Alice might want to touch on, we've been also sending out, we're going to do some fundraising events coming up soon, hopefully, to try and get a bit more crowdfunding.
Yeah. So we've got a few fundraising events that we'll eventually broadcast when we've got the finer details of what's going to happen with COVID and what's happening over the next few months. But yeah, so, we've also lined up with a charity. So we're actually connecting with Jean Hales for Women's Health, hoping to just encourage a little bit more awareness and support around women's health conditions, especially chronic conditions such as polycystic ovarian syndrome and endometriosis, and using, our experience of being a little bit uncomfortable or a lot uncomfortable with, how uncomfortable it can be to talk about these things, and encourage people to talk about them a little bit more and reach out for help if you're feeling like something's not quite right.
Yeah, love it. Love it. And definitely we can, share all the information that you have as it's ready with the people watching if they're interested. If anybody has questions, please drop them in the Q&A. I've got one more question for Bryony and Alice, and then we'll take a couple audience questions as well. But I just wanted to get your tips, and maybe we'll start with Bryony on this one. Kind of, what's your top tip for somebody who's preparing for their first offshore race, be it a double-handed or fully crewed? What's your best piece of advice?
I think it's just get out there and go sailing as much as you can, do as many offshore miles as you can before, get used to the watch system, get used to the kit that you'll be wearing. I recommend spending the money on good kit. So important. And yeah, it's all just being as prepared as you can. Make sure that you're going out with your crew, doing all the training sessions, doing all the safety drills, really important. And yeah, it's just time on the water, I think, is key.
Awesome. And Alice, how about you?
Yeah, I think I echo Bryony a little bit there, like get time on the water and don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to be that person. Like there's no such thing as a silly question. And I do think that as women, we can sort of feel a little bit like it's, you don't want to put yourself out there too much and overstep where you're at, but there's no such thing as a silly question. So get your head around things, learn the systems, ask why. And put lots of snacks in your wet weather gear. So you've got something when you're hungry. That's really important. Yeah, just get out there, go sailing.
I love that one. I always wear a bum bag when I'm racing offshore, and it always has Snickers.
Oh yeah. The more snacks, the better. You can never have too many.
Yeah. Awesome. A couple audience questions. So Kate's asked about the boat. It's not around. It hasn't been finished being built yet. From what you said, is that correct? When do you expect to get the boat?
Yeah. So unfortunately, COVID's not only affected us being able to train, but it's also affected our boat. So the boat's being built in Indonesia, and they've had a really harsh lockdown, and the factory building it for months now has been on half staff. So that sort of slowed down the production of it, unfortunately. But we're hoping in the next month or so it should be ready. But it's all very up in the air at the minute.
Yes. And how much two-handed racing have you, or two-handed sailing even, have you been able to do to date?
So Bryony's definitely got a lot more experience with it than I have. I've been really fortunate in that I've been going out on a Figaro up at RPA over the last, month or two, and doing some sailing there with a really lovely gentleman called Mark Dupree. And that's been really fantastic prep and sort of experience, and a great little boat and a really lovely guy. But yeah, Bryony, I know you've done a little bit of kind of overseas when you were in the UK.
Yeah, I did a training camp for solo sailing a while ago now. But yeah, so I did a bit of sailing on a Figaro and over there, and doing a bit of training over there, which was amazing experience. And Alice and I are trying to get out as much as we can together, even if it's just on like an Elliot, just to go sailing together, practicing maneuvers and as much sailing together as we can, just getting used to how we work together as a team as well.
Yeah. One of the cool things as well about, having a two-handed division in the Hobart, and then kind of, all the hype that was coming around the 2024 Olympic Games, which unfortunately isn't happening now, but is that there's more people that are going two-handed sailing, and two-handed sailing is something that's relatively new here in Australia. So there aren't that many opportunities to get involved. And I think that's one of the biggest reasons why we want to do this, is we want to start to do some two-handed sailing. We want to, get the experience and get ourselves out on the water. So we're hoping to be kind of the beginning of what will be a lot bigger and open up a lot more opportunities for other women and other sailors.
Nice. Okay, and I've got one more question. We'll take one more question from the audience. And so John's asked about the rules of using the autopilot during the race. So the rules are a bit different in the double-handed division. Can you let us know how that's going to work?
I think it's just, we won't be able to, we're obviously allowed to use it as a double-handed, but we won't be able to be I think accepted into the overall handicap results. So it's just going to be the sort of the two-handed division is obviously allowed to. We can't sail the boat without an autopilot, otherwise we'll get no sleep. So yeah.
Okay, great. Look, we'll wrap up your segment there, because I know especially Bryony has a ton of work that she needs to do with things opening back up, and needs to go and help everybody get their boats prepared to go sailing. And so massive thank you both to Alice and Bryony for joining us this morning. Really interested to watch your progress, and especially with all of the challenges that COVID has added to your preparation this year. But really interested to watch your progress and see how you go. And fingers crossed, see you down in Hobart sometime.
Hope so, this year or next year.
Sometime on the 30th.
Thanks, Deb. And just a little shout out to a friend in Tasmania, Layla Grafton, who's a little budding up and coming sailor. Hope to see her soon, hopefully when we get to Hobart.
Awesome. Thank you both.
Thanks.